I swear, shopping for a new television is an absolute minefield. You walk into the store, right?
Oh, yeah.
And suddenly you're just assaulted by abbreviations. HDR, refresh rates, HDMI 2.1, local dimming zones. It's not just confusing.
No.
It feels like they're intentionally overwhelming you with jargon.
They kind of are. And look, while all those abbreviations do matter, they are secondary details, really.
Right.
If we cut through all the noise, the single most fundamental choice you have to make, the choice that dictates the very technology creating the image, it comes down to two giants, QLED or OLED.
And that's our mission today.
Oh.
We are cutting straight to the core, trying to understand these two, well, fundamentally different approaches, so that when you, our listener, are ready to buy, you understand exactly what you're paying for, what each technology excels at, and, why.
Let's start with the basics then, the acronyms. OLED stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode, simple enough.
Okay.
And QLED, which is championed primarily by Samsung, stands for Quantum Dot LED TV.
Right, QLED, Samsung's baby.
Exactly. And on paper, they sound kind of similar, maybe, but in practice, they couldn't be more different in how they work.
So let's establish that foundational insight. You mentioned how they make light, because that sounds like the source of every difference we'll talk about.
Absolutely. The key difference is emissive versus transmissive. OLED is an emissive technology.
Emissive, meaning?
Meaning, think of it like millions of tiny, tiny independent subpixels. Each one is a minuscule light source. It generates its own light and color.
Okay.
And crucially, if it needs to display black, that pixel just turns off. Completely. No backlight needed at all.
Self-illuminating. That was the big shift, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tech LG really pushed hard for years, gave them a head start.
It really did. And yeah, there's some interesting history there. While LG was all in on developing and championing OLED, Samsung, for a long time, stuck firmly to that LCD foundation with QLED.
Why was that?
Well, a big part was that early OLED manufacturing was, frankly, complex, expensive, and it carried that higher risk of burn-in.
Burn-in. We'll get to that.
Definitely. And Samsung, well, they wanted to avoid that issue altogether with their main lineup.
That makes sense from a business perspective.
Right.
So if OLED is the sort of radical new tech, QLED is more like the evolution of the established standard, LCD.
Precisely. QLED is a transmissive technology. It's really an enhanced version of traditional LCD. So it requires an LED backlight.
Okay.
That light shines through a quantum dot film and then a liquid crystal display layer to create the final image you see. The picture is made by light passing through stuff.
Transmissive. Got it. But hang on, before we move on, there's this new wrinkle, right? QD OLED.
Yes. Good point.
That's Samsung basically saying, okay, maybe we can have our cake and eat it too. Best of both worlds.
It's sort of Samsung's strategic compromise, yeah. Launched in 2022, it takes the self-emissive base of OLED, so it still gets those perfect blacks.
Right, the core OLED advantage.
Exactly. But then it adds quantum dots, like in QLED, into the color layers. The idea is to boost efficiency and color vibrancy. It does kind of blur the line, but fundamentally, it's still an emissive OLED display at its heart.
Okay, that clarifies things. That gives us the foundation. Now let's move to the bit everyone really cares about, performance. The head-to-head on image quality.
Right. And this comparison, honestly, it truly begins and maybe even ends with contrast and black levels. This is OLED's defining unbeatable advantage.
Because the pixels turn off.
Because the pixels turn off completely when displaying black. You achieve literally infinite contrast ratios, zero light leakage, pure black.
And that perfect black is what makes HDR content, that high dynamic range stuff, really pop. Even if the overall brightness isn't necessarily record-breaking compared to some QLEDs.
Exactly right. QLED, on the other hand, struggles here just because of its structure. It needs that backlight. So even the most sophisticated QLEDs, the ones with hundreds, even thousands of local dimming zones, they still suffer from some light bleeding through.
And that's what gives you those slightly grayer blacks instead of true black.
Yes. And also that sometimes frustrating blooming effect. Where a bright object, like a star in space, or maybe subtitles, has a faint halo around it when it's shown against a really dark background.
Okay, so OLED wins the darkness war, clearly. Then QLED must dominate the light war. Is brightness really QLED's biggest selling point?
It absolutely is. For pure light output, QLED takes the crown. No question.
Right.
The brightest QLED models out there today definitely surpass any current OLED in peak brightness. And that makes them incredibly suitable for environments where OLEDs can sometimes struggle. Like very bright rooms, or maybe spaces with lots of windows, lots of natural light pouring in. QLED can power through that glare better.
But let me just push back on that for a second. If I'm in a typical living room, not a dedicated home theater, but also not a sunroom.
Sure, standard conditions.
How do I weigh that? The QLED's superior raw brightness versus the OLED's perfect contrast. Which one actually delivers the better, maybe more realistic HDR experience for most people, most of the time?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's nuanced. While QLED is brighter on paper, most industry folks and reviewers tend to agree that OLED's superior contrast usually creates a better overall HDR image in a standard viewing environment.
Why is that?
Because HDR is all about the range, the difference between the brightest brights and the darkest darks. And having absolute zero black as your starting point, that's an unbeatable denominator in that contrast ratio equation. So if you aren't constantly fighting direct sunlight, OLED often gives you that more visceral visual punch, that depth.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's pivot then. Viewing angles. This is crucial for anyone who doesn't sit directly in front of the TV. Wide couches, open plan living areas.
Yeah, this is another really clear win for OLED because the light is generated right there at the surface by each pixel.
Right, emissive.
OLED maintains nearly perfect uniformity and image fidelity from almost any viewing angle. Sit way off to the side, you still get pretty much the same great picture. Everyone on the couch sees the same thing.
And QLED, because it's transmissive, based on that LCD structure, it doesn't handle off-center viewing nearly as well.
Not really, no. It's inherent to LCD-based displays. They tend to suffer from reduced contrast, and the colors can look a bit washed out or shifted the further you move away from that center sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
And this is often accompanied by maybe minor uniformity issues across the panel itself sometimes, where some areas might look slightly brighter or darker than others, especially on dark screens. So if your family watches from all over the room, the sofa, an armchair over there, maybe even the kitchen island in an open plan.
Yeah, common setup.
Then OLED definitely offers a far more consistent experience for everyone.
We should probably briefly note here that things like resolution, refresh rates, color accuracy, those are largely comparable these days, aren't they?
Yeah, pretty much. Both technologies offer excellent 4K and even 8K options. High refresh rates for gaming are common, and the video processing from major brands is generally high quality across the board on premium models.
So less of a deciding factor between the two core techs now.
Generally, yes. Although, we should reiterate that QD OLED hybrid tech we mentioned, that does deliver particularly impressive color volume and accuracy thanks to combining those quantum dots with the OLED base. It's really vivid.
Okay, good point. All right, let's move beyond the pure tech specs. Let's talk brass tacks. Size, price, and that lingering fear factor of burn-in. This is where the decision often shifts from just best tech to best fit for me.
Absolutely. And size and price, they are totally linked, especially when you start looking at larger screens.
How so?
Well, because QLED is built on that mature, mass-produced LCD foundation, it just offers much greater flexibility in terms of size. You can find QLEDs from pretty small, maybe 32 inches, all the way up to truly enormous 98-inch displays, even bigger sometimes.
Whereas OLED production is still a bit more constrained, fewer size options.
Exactly. OLED TVs currently come in a more limited, specific set of sizes. Typically, you're looking at 42, 48, 55, 65, 77, 83, 88, and maybe a giant 97-inch model.
So if you absolutely must have, say, a 40-inch high-end TV, QLED might be your only real choice there.
Pretty much, yeah. Or if you want something truly massive, like over 85 inches.
I remember shopping for a big screen myself.
Yeah.
And seeing that price jump. It felt exponential once you crossed that 70 or 75-inch threshold. That's where the QLED value really seems to kick in.
It's significant, definitely. Price is the major lever, especially at scale. Our sources confirm what you saw. A 77-inch OLED, it generally starts around, maybe $2,200 these days, sometimes more.
Right.
And that's often substantially more expensive than many very good 75-inch QLED models. So for buyers looking for the biggest possible screen but needing to stick to a, let's say, tighter budget, QLED clearly offers the better value proposition there. Big screen, less money.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now let's tackle the elephant in the living room. Burn-in. This still feels like OLED's main Achilles heel, or at least the source of a lot of consumer anxiety.
It is a legitimate concern, yes, but it absolutely requires context. Burn-in, or permanent image retention, happens when static image elements, think those persistent news stickers, channel logos, maybe video game HUDs.
Yeah, the score bug, health bars.
Exactly. When those are displayed for very long periods, constantly, OLED is definitely more susceptible than QLED.
Why, fundamentally?
Because those individual organic pixels, the O in OLED, they can degrade at slightly different rates when they're forced to display the same bright static content for hours and hours on end, day after day. QLED, using inorganic quantum dots and an LCD structure, doesn't have that specific organic degradation issue.
Okay, so it is a real physical difference.
Yeah.
But how much of the fear is, well, realistic for the average viewer?
Honestly, the risk is vastly overstated for typical varied viewing habits. Burn-in generally requires prolonged, and I mean really prolonged, exposure to identical static images. We're talking hours upon hours daily over many months, maybe even years, on the exact same content.
Right.
Plus, modern OLEDs have pretty sophisticated built-in compensation tech now. Things like pixel shifting, logo luminance adjustments, panel refresh cycles that run automatically. They actively fight it.
So the takeaway is, if you exclusively play one single video game 8 hours a day with a bright, constant health bar in the corner.
Or, yeah, if you literally leave a 24-hour news channel with a bright static logo on all day, every day.
Then maybe QLED is the safer bet just to completely avoid that specific risk.
In those specific extreme cases, yes, QLED removes that worry entirely. But for the vast majority of users who watch movies, different TV shows, maybe you play various games, switch channels, it's really not likely to be a major factor in the lifespan of the TV.
Okay. It's a risk profile, not a guarantee, as you said. If your habits fit that extreme scenario, choose QLED. If not, maybe the OLED picture benefits outweigh the minimal risk.
That's a very good way to put it.
All right, so we've covered the fundamental tech, the key performance differences, contrast, brightness, viewing angles, and the practical stuff like cost, size, and durability concerns like burn-in. Let's try and synthesize all this. What's the ultimate verdict when you put it all together?
Okay, the synthesis. When we compare the absolute top models from each category, setting price aside for a moment, just looking at quality.
Best versus best.
OLED consistently delivers the superior overall picture quality in most typical viewing environments. Those perfect blacks, the effectively infinite contrast, and the exceptional viewing angles they combine to create a fundamentally more immersive, more lifelike experience.
So if picture quality is the absolute #1 priority,
OLED usually wins, yes, but QLED still has a huge place and dominates market share in many segments for good reasons.
so where does QLED fit in perfectly? Who is it the ideal choice for?
QLED is the sensible, often highly recommended choice if your specific situation or priorities dictate it. Specifically, number one, your viewing room is just flooded with uncontrollable natural light, and you need that extra punch of brightness to cut through the glare.
Okay, bright rooms.
Two, you absolutely need a very large screen size, say 85 inches, 90 inches, or even bigger, and you need to keep it within a more reasonable budget. QLED offers that scale affordably.
Size for the money.
And three, your specific content habits genuinely put you squarely in that high-risk category for burn-in we just discussed. If that's you, QLED provides peace of mind.
Makes sense. It's about matching the tech to the use case. Before we wrap up, let's just briefly look ahead. We know this QLED versus OLED rivalry is driving incredible innovation. What's the next big jump we should be aware of beyond these two?
Well, we mentioned QD-OLED, which is already here and pushing boundaries, blending the techs. But the real potential future, the one everyone talks about, is micro-LED.
Micro-LED, right?
It uses millions of microscopic inorganic LEDs, like tiny individual QLEDs almost, but self-emissive like OLED.
So the promise is...
The promise is basically OLED-level perfect blacks and infinite contrast, potentially even higher brightness than current QLED, and crucially, zero risk of burn-in because it's inorganic.
Micro-LED sounds like the technological holy grail then. Best of all worlds.
Pretty much, yeah. It theoretically solves QLED's contrast problem and OLED's potential burn-in and brightness limitations. The catch.
There's always a catch.
Cost, as always. Current consumer-grade micro-LED models are astronomically, prohibitively expensive. We're talking well over $100,000, sometimes much more for large sizes.
Wow. Okay, so definitely the future, but absolutely not the present for most people.
Not even close, unfortunately. It needs massive manufacturing breakthroughs to become mainstream.
Okay, so for you, our listener, who might be about to pull the trigger on a new TV now, let's just quickly recap those 5 key decision questions that came out of our discussion. The things you should ask yourself.
Right. Let's nail these down. First, room brightness. Is your room bathed in uncontrollable natural light during your main viewing times? If yes, lean towards QLED's brightness advantage.
Second, viewing angles. Do you, your family, your guests often watch from various positions way off to the side? If yes, OLED maintains picture quality much better from any seat.
Third, screen size versus budget. Is your absolute top priority getting the biggest possible screen for the lowest possible price, especially above 75 inches? If yes, QLED is the clear value winner there.
Fourth, content type and habits. Are you primarily watching content with very bright, persistent static logos or game elements for many hours every single day? If burn-in is a genuine, serious, relevant concern based on your specific habits, QLED avoids that risk entirely.
And finally, number 5, picture quality priority. If absolute perfect black, infinite contrast, and that ultimate cinematic depth and immersion are your non-negotiable top goals, and your room isn't a sun-drenched greenhouse, OLED still generally reigns supreme for that pure visual fidelity.
It really is refreshing to see how both technologies have earned their place. They have clear, scientifically backed advantages in different areas. The choice isn't just about which one is universally best, is it?
Not at all.
It's about which one is best for you, your specific room, your budget constraints, and crucially, your viewing habits.
Exactly. And maybe that leads us nicely into the final provocative thought for you to mull over after this. We just talked about microLED, right? Offering the best of both worlds, perfect blacks like OLED, no burn-in risk like QLED, potentially even brighter.
Right, the super expensive holy grail tech.
But currently, as we said, astronomically priced. So the question to ponder is this. Given the incredible speed of technological development we always see in displays, how rapidly does that price point have to drop on microLED before it starts to make today's high-end QLED and high-end OLED TVs feel, well, maybe not obsolete, but certainly less compelling? How fast until microLED becomes the default choice, rendering this whole debate irrelevant? That timeline might determine the future of your next few TV purchases.